Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's updates from the United States are nothing short of explosive. Let's dive straight into the biggest headline. President Donald Trump has just dropped a bombshell. More than 500 jobs at Voice of America and its parent agency are being cut. Yes, you heard that right, 500 plus jobs gone. And this comes while the whole issue is already tangled up in a major court battle. Supporters are calling it a bold move to save taxpayer money, but critics say it's a direct attack on journalism and the freedom of information. Now moving on to something heartbreaking. In Minneapolis, a school mass turned into tragedy when a shooting claimed the lives of 2 children and left many others injured. The entire nation is shaken, and flags across the U.S. are flying at half-staff to honor those young victims. The decision by President Donald Trump to order more than 500 job cuts at Voice of America and its parent agency has sent shockwaves across the United States and beyond. This is not a small adjustment or a minor reshuffle in staffing. It is a sweeping move that fundamentally changes the structure and future of one of the country's most recognized international broadcasting platforms. Voice of America has long stood as a channel through which America communicates with the world, sharing news, cultural perspectives, and official positions on global issues. Cutting such a large number of jobs in one stroke has raised serious questions about the direction and intentions behind this decision, while also leaving hundreds of families uncertain about their livelihoods and futures. For the employees directly affected, the announcement is nothing short of devastating. Many of them have dedicated years, even decades, of service to creating news reports, translations, and cultural programs that reach millions across the globe. The sudden notice that their jobs are no longer secure leaves them facing financial instability, career uncertainty, and a profound sense of betrayal. Beyond the personal level, the organizational structure of VOA will now look drastically different. Losing 500 voices means losing experience, diversity, and institutional knowledge that cannot easily be replaced. The newsroom environment, already under pressure to balance credibility and government oversight, will struggle with fewer reporters, editors, and technical staff. The ripple effects extend to the audience as well. VOA has historically been one of the few windows through which people in restricted or censored countries could access relatively independent information about global events. When the agency loses such a large portion of its staff, the quality and quantity of coverage will inevitably decline. Whole regions may find less attention, fewer languages may be represented, and breaking stories may not be covered with the depth or speed that was once possible. The trust that audiences built over decades could weaken as programming becomes thinner and less diverse in perspective. This erosion of credibility can harm America's soft power and reduce its ability to connect with international audiences. On the political stage, the decision to remove such a significant number of workers is symbolic. It communicates a message about priorities, budgets, and control. For supporters of the move, it is a sign of bold leadership, cutting through what they see as bureaucracy and unnecessary spending. They argue that VOA has grown bloated and unaccountable, and trimming the staff is a way to realign it with a leaner, more efficient mission. For critics, however, it appears as an attack on the free flow of information. They warn that slashing staff weakens the independence of journalism, and instead of fostering a stronger agency, it risks turning VOA into a hollow platform, unable to serve its global audience with credibility. What makes this moment even more intense is the scale of the cut. In any large organization, the loss of a few dozen positions might be absorbed over time, but when 500 or more are suddenly removed, the blow is immediate and structural. Departments could shut down entirely, languages could be dropped, and programs that took years to build could vanish overnight. It is not only a change in personnel, but also a redefinition of the agency's mission. For those who have long viewed VOA as a beacon of American openness, this change feels like a step backward. In short, the first and most visible consequence of Trump's order is the immediate disruption caused by the removal of over 500 employees. The morale of those who remain employed may also suffer, knowing that their protection from political pressure is uncertain and perhaps weakened. The optics of this situation are also significant on the global stage. America frequently positions itself as a champion of the rule of law and independent institutions. When its own president moves forward with sweeping decisions, while legal proceedings are still active, it risks appearing hypocritical in the eyes of international observers. Countries with weaker democracies may use this as an example to justify undermining their own judicial systems or media outlets. In this way, the impact of the decision stretches far beyond the immediate legal and political sphere in Washington. In the end, the ongoing court battle represents a key backdrop that amplifies the significance of Trump's decision. If the layoffs had been ordered at a time of stability, they might still have been controversial. But in the middle of a judicial review, they gain symbolic weight as a test of how far executive power can go. The coming weeks will likely reveal whether the courts push back against this move, or whether the administration manages to reshape the agency despite the legal challenges. Either way, the intertwining of mass job cuts with ongoing litigation ensures that this episode will be remembered, not only for its human cost, but also for what it reveals about power, law, and accountability in the American system. The third key point centers on the deep concerns for freedom of the press raised by President Trump's decision to cut more than 500 jobs at Voice of America and its parent agency. For decades, VOA has symbolized America's commitment to free and independent journalism, especially for audiences living under regimes where information is tightly controlled or censored. By reducing the workforce on such a massive scale, critics argue that the administration risks undermining this independence, silencing important voices, and shifting the balance of content toward politically motivated narratives rather than objective reporting. The debate is not just about economics or restructuring. It is about the very essence of what it means to have a press that is free from excessive government influence. Journalists, both within and outside of the United States, have expressed alarm at the potential consequences when hundreds of reporters, editors, and producers lose their jobs at once. The loss is not only about manpower, but about credibility and diversity of perspective. Each journalist brings unique expertise, often covering regions or topics that others cannot. With their removal, entire areas of coverage could disappear, leaving international audiences without reliable information about their own countries or about U.S. policy. In societies where access to truthful reporting already faces obstacles, the absence of VOA's broad reporting could mean millions are left with only state-controlled narratives from their own governments. This diminishes America's global voice and weakens its reputation as a defender of open information. Critics of the move also warn about the chilling effect it could create on those who remain employed. If journalists see that such a drastic cut can happen under political leadership, they may begin to self-censor, avoiding stories that could be viewed as critical of those in power. The spirit of independent journalism thrives only when reporters feel free to pursue the truth without fear of reprisal. Job insecurity, especially on such a large scale, can quietly erode this freedom. Over time, the agency could transform from being a platform of independent reporting into one that merely echoes government narratives, which is exactly the danger press freedom advocates are most concerned about. Supporters of Trump's decision, however, argue differently. They claim that the cuts are not an attack on freedom of the press, but a necessary measure to reduce inefficiency and wasteful spending. They insist that fewer jobs do not necessarily mean less independence, and that restructuring could in fact strengthen the agency's focus. Yet this argument has not been enough to calm fears, because independence in journalism is not only about efficiency, but also about the perception of credibility. Once the world believes that VOA is under tighter government control, its effectiveness as a voice of free information is compromised, regardless of the internal justifications given for the cuts. The issue also has symbolic weight. The United States often criticizes other governments for limiting press freedom and shutting down independent media outlets. When such a large downsizing happens at America's own government-funded broadcaster, it gives adversaries a powerful counter-argument. Leaders in countries where media freedom is under threat can now point to VOA's cuts as evidence that even the U.S. does not fully uphold the principles it preaches. This damages not only VOA's credibility, but also the moral authority of the United States in promoting freedom and democracy abroad. Ultimately, the concern about press freedom lies at the heart of this controversy. Removing more than 500 employees during an already sensitive legal and political moment risks reducing from a respected international broadcaster to a weakened institution with limited reach and diminished independence. While budget cuts and efficiency arguments may continue to dominate official explanations, the broader consequence is the possibility of a muted and less independent press voice. If this happens, the world may lose one of the most significant channels of open information it has relied on for decades, and America itself may lose a part of its identity as a champion of free expression. The fourth key point highlights the national and global impact of President Trump's decision to cut more than 500 jobs at Voice of America and its parent agency. While the immediate effects are felt by the employees and the organization itself, the consequences of such a move stretch far beyond the walls of the newsroom. At home, it touches on the strength of America's media landscape and the country's ongoing debates about democracy, free speech, and accountability. Abroad, it changes how the United States is seen by the rest of the world, especially in countries where VOA has long been one of the only accessible sources of relatively independent information. In this way, the decision is not simply an administrative reshuffle, it is an action with ripple effects that can shape perceptions, relationships, and influence on a global scale. Domestically, the cuts send a strong message about priorities and governance. For supporters of the move, it shows that the administration is serious about reducing what it considers inefficiency and overspending in government-funded agencies. They argue that tax dollars should not be used to maintain bloated bureaucracies, and that a leaner, more controlled Voice of America may serve its purpose more effectively. However, for critics, the move feels like a warning shot to other media institutions. If the government can downsize and reshape one of its own international broadcasters so dramatically, what prevents similar moves against domestic institutions in the future? This concern feeds into broader anxieties about press freedom, the independence of journalism, and the role of government in controlling narratives. It sparks debates about whether America is drifting toward tighter control of media, which historically has been one of its greatest tools for showing democratic strength.